Look at this man, a brilliant 28-year-old Ph.D. student, a scholar of criminal justice at Washington State University, intellectual, quiet, focused. He spent his days in lecture halls analyzing the psychology of serial killers, studying forensic countermeasures, and discussing how criminals make sloppy mistakes. But while his professors saw a promising young criminologist, Bryan Kohberger was actually using the university as his personal laboratory to plan the perfect slaughter. To understand the horrifying mind of Bryan Kohberger, we have to look behind the academic mask, back to his adolescence. This wasn't a crime of sudden impulse. It was the final stage of a decade-long psychological decay. As a teenager, Bryan was severely bullied for being overweight. He later developed a severe addiction to heroin, using it to numb a terrifying medical condition known as visual snow syndrome and a profound case of depersonalization deregistration disorder. In his private online journals, which forensic analysts later recovered, a teenage Bryan wrote, "I feel like an organic sack of meat. I have no emotion. I feel nothing for my family. I am completely detached from reality." This is where the monster was born. When a human brain is biologically incapable of feeling empathy, it starts looking for external stimuli just to feel alive. For Bryan, that stimulus became the ultimate taboo, murder. He turned his pathology into a science. Just months before 4 young students were brutally butchered in their beds in Moscow, Idaho, Bryan turned to Reddit. Posing as a researcher, he published a chilling academic survey. He asked former criminals, "How did you choose your victim? What were you thinking right before you struck? How did you leave the scene without getting caught?" The internet thought it was just a university study, but in reality, a real-life predator was crowdsourcing data for his own upcoming execution. Welcome back to Behind the Lie. Today we are opening the master file on Bryan Kohberger. We will dissect the chilling pathology of an intellectual killer, analyze the hidden clues in his everyday behavior, and look directly behind the lie. In the early morning hours of November 13, 2022, a quiet off-campus house in Moscow, Idaho, became a slaughterhouse. Inside, 4 young students, Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan, were asleep. At 4 a.m., a white Hyundai Elantra circled the block 3 times before parking. What followed is what criminologists call predatory hyper-focus. Bryan Kohberger entered the home with a military-grade Ka-Bar knife. In exactly 11 minutes, he moved through the dark hallways, inflicting catastrophic wounds on 4 people. He operated with a chilling, detached precision, no hesitation, no mercy. But the criminologist, who thought he was planning the perfect crime, committed a catastrophic tactical blunder. As he slaughtered Madison and Kaylee in the 3rd-floor bed, he left behind a single, damning piece of evidence, the leather sheath of his knife, resting right next to their bodies. Bryan's brain, locked in a state of cognitive overload during the adrenaline spike of the murders, completely forgot the sheath. On its button snap, forensic teams later isolated a single source of male DNA. It was his. Realizing his mistake only after he fled, Bryan's behavior transitioned into an intense phase of forensic countermeasures. He didn't panic, he cleaned. Over the next few weeks, Bryan meticulously disassembled his car, stripping out the interior panels and scrubbing the inside of the door handles with harsh chemicals to destroy any trace of biological evidence. He was trying to beat the very system he had studied for years, unaware that the physical world keeps receipts, and his digital footprint had already condemned him. While the entire nation was paralyzed by the news of the Idaho student murders, Bryan Kohberger was quietly celebrating what he believed was his intellectual victory. This brings us to a phenomenon known as the duping reward, the profound internal thrill a sociopath experiences after successfully pulling off a horrific act and watching the world scramble for answers. But a criminal mind, no matter how educated, always suffers from leakage, the involuntary subconscious exposure of a person's true thoughts through their everyday behavior. Just days after the killings, Bryan drove his white Hyundai Elantra to an auto repair shop in Pullman, Washington. Surveillance cameras captured him in a state of absolute calm. He wasn't hiding, he was interacting. As the mechanic worked on his car, Bryan initiated a casual conversation. With a relaxed smile and open body language, he looked the worker in the eyes and casually asked if he had heard about the terrible tragedy across the state line. referring to the very murders he had committed less than a week prior. Let's analyze the profound psychological distortion here. This wasn't a tactical move to blend in. This was a classic manifestation of narcissistic omnipotence. By discussing his own crimes with a complete stranger, Bryan was feeding his ego, testing whether his normal student persona could perfectly mask a mass murderer. Look at his hand gestures on the camera. Smooth, fluid, expansive. There is no physiological trace of anxiety, no micro-stuttering, no closed postures. He was completely detached from the horror he caused, treating the slaughter of 4 human beings as a fascinating academic topic for small talk. He believed he was an invisible ghost, totally unaware that the very car he was standing next to was already being tracked by an FBI digital dragnet. When the cameras of court TV finally focused on Bryan Kohberger during his initial hearings, the public was deeply unsettled by one specific feature: his face. It wasn't just calm, it was entirely devoid of human animation. A robotic, unblinking glare that true crime commenters immediately labeled as the look of pure evil. But forensic psychiatrists saw something much more complex: the mask of affective flattening. To understand this chilling lack of emotion, we must return to Bryan's adolescent journals. For years, he suffered from an extreme neurological cocktail: visual snow syndrome, a rare condition where the brain perceives reality like the static noise of an old television, and depersonalization disorder. In a series of raw, heartbreaking posts on a Tapatalk forum under the username xheel, a 16-year-old Bryan desperately wrote, "I feel like nothing. I look at my family and I see no emotion. I am blank. I live my life behind a pane of glass. I cannot connect to anyone." When the defense officially brought his clinical profile to light, they confirmed that Bryan was also diagnosed with high-functioning Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD. This completely shifts our understanding of his courtroom behavior. What looked like cold, psychopathic arrogance was actually a severe neurological deficit. Bryan's brain was physically incapable of mirroring or expressing standard social emotions. Look closely at his jawline during the cross-examinations. Notice the total absence of autonomic nervous system leakage, no micro-sweating, no heavy breathing, no orbicularis oculi tension around his eyes. He sat behind the defense table like an outside observer, assessing his own mass murder trial as if it were a dry academic thesis defense. He wasn't afraid of the courtroom. He was completely detached from it, trapped behind that same pane of glass that had haunted him since childhood. The long-awaited climax of the Idaho student murder case arrived with a psychological explosion that no one anticipated. Faced with mountains of unassailable forensic evidence and the looming threat of the death penalty, the intellectual criminal finally folded. Bryan Kohberger entered a formal guilty plea, but if the families of the victims expected a single shred of human remorse during the sentencing, they were met with an icy wall of arrogance. When Judge John Judge turned to the defense table and gave Kohberger his final opportunity to address the courtroom, to speak directly to the weeping parents of the children he slaughtered, Bryan leaned into the microphone. His voice didn't crack. His expression remained utterly dead. He uttered just 3 chilling words: "I respectfully decline."
I respectfully decline.
The courtroom erupted in pure fury. Cries of "coward" echoed through the gallery. But analyze his micro-expressions in that exact moment. As the anger of the room washed over him, a subtle, unilateral tightening of his jaw muscle occurred. Psychologists recognize this as a transient flash of narcissistic injury, the elite criminal's defense mechanism when his absolute control over the narrative is stripped away. By refusing to apologize, Bryan was executing his final tactical act of power, denying his victims' families the closure they so desperately craved. Today, Bryan Kohberger sits in a maximum security cell, condemned to 4 consecutive life sentences with 0 possibility of parole. The academic who wanted to study the perfect crime became its permanent specimen. But this dark saga is far from over. What chilling details were found in the unredacted FBI files regarding his exact behavior inside the house? What shocking security lapses did the victims' families uncover that led to a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the university? And what did Bryan say in a secret, smuggled prison letter that points to an accomplice? The answers are unraveling right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and leave your thoughts below. Did he decline to speak out of autistic detachment? Or was it the final act of a remorseless monster? Thank you for watching Behind the Lie. Stay vigilant.